Good morning and welcome on behalf of the New West Symphony League. We're glad that you joined us this morning. Saturday evening's concert will feature an innovative pairing of musical and visual arts. Students from Cal State University Channel Islands have prepared this original artwork to accompany Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade. This morning we're going to not only see the art, we're going to get to meet those artists. They are Kelly Denton, Erica Craig, Nan Kane, Jonathan Larva, and Ashley Norman. Our musical treat this morning will be offered by Danielle Belen, a rising star in the classical music galaxy and the concert master for this weekend's performances. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Maestro Brott, Danielle, and Kelly. Let's give them a big hand.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all again. Today we have a real treat because normally, we all go to concerts, and the question I'm most often asked by audience members is, what am I supposed to see or think about when I hear this music? What does this music mean? And of course, in the case of a Beethoven symphony, it's rather difficult to explain what it might mean, or in the case of a symphonic work or a sonata, because usually composers deal with musical material rather than visual material. But in the case of today's program, we're going to discuss a work that very definitely has a story connotation, that of Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov. The tale of 1001 Nights has been a tale that has fascinated people throughout the ages. The idea of infidelity, of course, is something that we're all concerned about. And it seems that the inspiration for this was a certain sultan who had married a young lady and discovered, quite to his chagrin, that she'd been unfaithful to him. And he was very disturbed about this, and of course, he had her head cut off. But then he decided that all women were fickle. So he thought, well, I will marry them, and then after spending a night with them, I'll have their head cut off, and then we can go to the next one, because that way I won't be embarrassed by their infidelity. This all makes logical sense, doesn't it? Until he was finally introduced to the daughter of the vizier of his court, and fell in love with her, or in lust with her, we're not exactly sure, they don't tell us, and said, okay, I would like to marry this young lady. Except she was extremely clever, this young lady. Scheherazade, that was her name. And she spent the night with him, but prior to that, she began to tell him stories. And she would never finish the story. She would always sort of leave him hanging, like a television sitcom. You never know what's coming next. And so he was quite intrigued. And apparently this went on for 1001 nights. And obviously after that period of time, he gave up. And so presumably they stayed married. So this is a word to the wise for all young couples, considering marriage and not wanting to have their heads cut off. It's a good idea to keep telling stories and never get to the end. So musically, we thought that it might be kind of fun, not just to rely on the music alone, but rather to invite some artists, some wonderful artists from California State University Channel Islands, to create works of art inspired by that music. And so we, thanks to Jack Riley, who is the head of the arts department, we met with a number of artists that he'd chosen, and in fact they chose, listening to the works, movements that they would describe within their art. But before we do that, I thought it might be an idea for you to listen from the standpoint of Rimsky-Korsakov's composition, to his voice of Scheherazade. And the voice of Scheherazade is performed by our concertmaster, who has a variety of solos based on a pretty similar theme, depicting, I suppose, each one of these tales told in a different way. And Danielle Belen is now going to perform several of those cadenzas that interrupt the movements of each of the pieces, as to give us a taste, a feel for what we're to expect and what the art, in a sense, is helping us describe. So as a contrast, you want to give me, perhaps, or give us another one of the cadenzas based again on that theme?
Yes, I would
that
like
so
to.
captivated the Sultan?
This is, I think, a little bit more of Scheherazad's darker side coming out, telling maybe the same story.
Thank you, Danielle. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Kelly Denton, who is the first victim. And Kelly, perhaps you might like to tell us just a little bit about yourself and your field of study and what type of art you like to deal with in your painting.
Certainly. Good morning, Boris. Good morning, everyone.
Let's have a look. Nope. I think they've taped over it such that it should be on, but it's not. I think you might like to have a look at this one. Presumably we can cut this out of the tape. Okay. All yours, Kelly.
Good morning, Boris. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Denton. I am a graduating senior at California State University, Channel Islands, and my emphasis in the fine arts department is illustration. So I create works based on stories and also on other types of poetry and the written word.
So can you tell us what you were influenced by in the music? How did you set about to describe this movement that you chose in a pictorial way?
Sure. I chose the movement, The Sea in Sinbad's Ship, which basically encompasses many of Sinbad's journeys and travels. So I named my work The Journey. It's loosely based on this. Basically, I closed my eyes, I listened to this movement, and this is what I envisioned. It's a work beginning with a sea serpent engulfing a Sinbad's ship, or a seafarer's ship, with a male figure climbing up a cliff into an enchanted forest. So it basically, it is the first work here right on the left. And I envisioned an enchanted journey filled with beautiful imagery, and also the figure up above is Scheherazade, and she is creating this world with her fingers and with her hands, and she's basically creating the world.
That's wonderful, very interesting. Now, you've also choreographed details of the work such that the work isn't really revealed in its entirety until the end of the movement. We see various details of the work, and you've listened to the music and choreographed it's in such a way that the images that will appear on the screens will eventually kind of end up with our seeing the whole of the work. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, I began with just small details of my piece and revealed more and more as the movement went on, and revealed the final full piece at the end.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Kelly Denton.
Thank you.
Now, Danielle, while we set up for our second artist, perhaps you could tell me a little bit about what you are doing these days. I understand that you have a music camp in the summer.
I do. I'm a very passionate teacher in addition to performing. And I have started a music camp for incredibly gifted students, and it's held in Three Rivers, California. It all came about actually because my parents, a year and a half ago, retired up in Three Rivers. Some of you may have heard of Three Rivers before. It's beautiful. It's right at the gateways to the Sequoias, at Sequoia National Park. And my background, having studied the violin from a very young age, I would go to summer camp, and music summer camp is one of the most powerful times for a young musician to hone their skills and really focus on their instrument. And I was lucky to participate in a camp called Encore, School for Strings in Ohio, and that really made a deep impression on me, leading to my professional career. The work that I got done that summer was unlike anything I had gotten done during the school years, with so many other things going on academically. So when my parents moved to Three Rivers, I saw this place and I thought, wow, this reminds me of a wonderful summer retreat. And at first I thought, oh, maybe I'll invite a few of my students up to crash on the floor at my parents' house, and we'll have a little pizza party and practice and then a concert. And I met this man named Bill Haxton, who was incredibly passionate. He lives in the town, incredibly passionate about bringing a high-level music festival to his town. So we met, and sparks just flew because I had these students, he had the drive, he had the audience, and so my little sleepover at my parents' house turned into a 2-week-long summer camp. And since then, we've become a nonprofit organization. We have students coming from all over the world. We have a couple students coming from Korea and one from Bulgaria, and many from the East Coast, and many from the Colburn School where I teach in Los Angeles. So it's a small program right now. It's about 20 students, and it's focused on solo playing and chamber music, and they get lessons nearly every day. So it's a very intensive environment, but lots of fun things to do because of the park being there. Last year we took all the kids up and they saw bears, and most of these kids had never seen a bear in their life. So it was, it's really thrilling, and I stand back and watch, and I can't in disbelief that this has all happened so quickly. And anyway, I'm really proud of it. It's called Center Stage Strings, and we, of course, have a website and a video and all kinds of things you can find out about on the internet.
That's wonderful. Now, you are going to play for us again, and I understand you're going to play a piece of music from a recording that you've just made by Naxos. Could you tell us a little bit about it, and then perhaps play the first piece?
Yes, I'd be happy to. In 2008, I won the Sphinx competition, and one of the prizes was to record a CD under the Naxos recording label, which was just a dream come true. And they asked me to pick one American contemporary composer to feature all of his works for violin on a CD. And that CD has just come out, and his name is Lawrence Dillon, the composer I chose, and I'm so happy that I met him, and we now have a friendship, and I've learned all the stories behind his pieces. The piece I'm going to play for you right now is actually the very first thing I heard that kind of got me hooked on his music, and it's a short piece. And I'm kind of a sucker for anything with a corny name. So it's called Mr. Blister.
Thank you, Danielle. Well, it's now my great pleasure to introduce you to Erica Craig, who is the next artist of our 5 artists. I'm going to ask you, Erica, please, to tell us, first of all, a little bit about yourself.
All right, well, I'm happy to be here. I'm a junior right now at Cal State Channel Islands. I do both painting and illustration, so you don't get to see my illustrative side today. My painting is the second one right there. I do a lot of portraits, so I kind of decided to concentrate on the storyteller in this work.
And which movement are you depicting in this work?
The second movement, it's called the Calendar Prince, who you don't see, but...
Well, describe the painting for us.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to be looking at in the painting? What influenced you, and how you relate that particularly to the music?
Okay, well, the music to me seemed very strong and adventurous and free. And I think of Scheherazade as a strong woman. I mean, she's the female artist, the creative mind. And so the composition is really following her pose and following her story. She's also weaving this world or conjuring up these images.
And what's the reference of the snake in this?
Well, there's a part in the middle of the movement that gets quite sudden and quite fierce, and that's where the snake comes in threatening her. It kind of incorporates the Sultan too.
Uh-huh.
She's really telling stories for her life.
Yes, indeed, of course. Absolutely. Well, it's a very inspiring painting. Thank you so much.
It's beautiful.
Danielle, tell me a little bit about the Sphinx competition that you won.
The Sphinx competition is very special to me. It's a competition for Latino and African American string players. And the Sphinx organization actually is so much more than the competition. They have all kinds of community engagement programs. They provide instruments to kids in low-income areas. They have a virtuoso orchestra made up of Latino and African American musicians that tours the world. They have built partnerships. It's run by a man named Aaron Dworkin, and you may have heard of him before. He was actually in People magazine a couple years ago as one of the, top 50 entrepreneurs of the year or something like that. And he started this organization from nothing, and it's grown. I think it's in its 11th year now. And he has built relationships with all kinds of orchestras, from the Pittsburgh Symphony to the Cleveland Orchestra, San Francisco Symphony, Colorado Symphony, I mean, you name it, Boston Pops. And so when I won the competition, almost immediately, I mean, I would say it was a month later, that I started getting calls from these various orchestras asking if I would like to appear as a soloist with them. And I always tell my friends this competition is like the jackpot of all competitions, because you win a competition and sometimes you get some money and you maybe get to solo with an orchestra and do a recital or something like that. And with this orchestra, this is 3 years later, and I'm still reaping the benefits. And in fact, they gave me an award last year called the Sanford Allen Award, and it was a gift of $5,000, which I have in turn put towards my camp to fund scholarships. So I think we're going to start building a relationship where my camp will provide scholarships to Sphinx musicians.
What's the idea of Sphinx? When I think of the Sphinx, I think of this very silent Egyptian
I'm ashamed
figure.
to say I actually don't know. I don't know what.
Well, we'll have to find out and put it on our web. Because I was always intrigued with the word Sphinx.
I know, it doesn't
what it had to do with
connotate-
Latino Americans, African Americans, apart from being at the extreme north end of the African continent, I couldn't figure out what the relationship
You
really
asked me a
was.
question I do not know.
Oh, good.
But you'd think I talk about Sphinx so much, I should probably figure out what the title is.
Probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea.
Tell me a little bit about Scheherazade as a work from your standpoint as a concertmaster? Because you have a duality of role.
Yes.
You're both the protagonist, Scheherazade, on these incredibly difficult, and she plays these with such ease you wouldn't know that they were hard to play. They're extremely difficult, very exposed both from an intonation and technical standpoint, as well as an inspirational standpoint, because she's telling the story that the artists are depicting in visual terms, but she's doing it orally, so that you kind of get the message through her performance. And then she has to turn around and lead the orchestra in the orchestral part. So there's the duality of that role. Tell me about some of the challenges.
There is the nature of playing concertmaster is this duality of roles, and switching from being a team player and leading your section and being, enrapturing your sound within everybody's sound. And then within an instant, you have to be a soloist and put on a totally different hat, kind of become a little bit of a diva for a few seconds and then go back. And actually in Scheherazade, there's very little time at the beginning before the first solo comes in. So I'm kind of in the mood of Scheherazade from the very start of the piece, but then it goes on for quite a while with many different characters before the theme has to come back again. And this work, Scheherazade, is one of the foundations of a concertmaster's solo repertoire. This and Strauss's Heldenleben are probably two of the biggest concertmaster solos. They're weaved throughout the piece, as opposed to most pieces where there's a little concertmaster solo kind of stuck in the middle there. This really goes throughout it. So it's kind of a dream to be able to actually play it with the orchestra. I've played it for so many auditions, and I've actually done it once with orchestra before, but it's been a long time. So this is really an honor for me to be able to play it, and with such a wonderful orchestra. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, though.
You're going to play for us again. What?
I think I'll play a little more Scheherazade.
Oh, good. Okay.
So this is kind of a mix of the very sweet theme, the very sweet story that she's telling, and then immediately you'll hear when it becomes fiery and impassioned and almost angry. Which to me, actually, this excerpt kind of, although it's not the exact movement that she was depicting, this picture speaks to me for this particular excerpt.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our third artist, Nan Kane, who's actually created two pieces for us from an artistic point of view. Nan, perhaps you might tell us a little bit about your own career as an artist first.
My career goes back quite a ways. I'm a retired graphic designer, but I have to tell you that this opportunity to illustrate this beautiful music goes back a lot farther for me. My grandfather was a frustrated artist. He wrote an opera, he wrote music, he painted, and our home was always filled with Rimsky-Korsakov's music, Stravinsky's music. It was the heyday in New York of those kinds of performances that were going on with Stokowski and other great composers and concertmasters. When this opportunity came up, I have to tell you, I cried. It was as though something from my childhood, the music I'd grown up with, was now once again in my life. Going back to school has been just the most fulfilling thing and challenging thing that's ever happened to me, and I never expected it at my age. So taking on this piece and this project, it means a great deal to me, personally.
That's wonderful.
That's where I'm coming from.
So tell us a little about the music that you chose to describe and how you chose to describe it.
Well, the fourth movement, which is the end of the piece, has a lot of the dance sounds to me. To me, the piece always was a dancing orchestral piece.
It's interesting. From my knowledge, it's never been turned into a ballet. It would make an ideal ballet.
It was
really
a
would.
Ballet, in fact.
Oh, really? Because I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Yeah.
When it was written, it wasn't written as a ballet.
No, it was not. I know that.
But Serge Diaghilev of Ballet Russe put it on. You know, in that day, ballets and concerts were the entertainment. And he was always looking for new sounds and new things.
Yes, he certainly was.
They put on Firebird, the Stravinsky, and those things. Well, this was one of the great ballets they put on. Leon Bakst, who is famous as a costume designer and set designer, did these fantastical costumes for the dancers. And the Orient was so exciting and interesting and exotic to people in the audience then. So this production itself was a huge success.
It's a shame that it's not in anyone's repertoire. I mean, I spent 3 years at the Royal Ballet, and I never heard of it. This is the first I hear of it.
That is a shame. That is a shame, because the music lends itself to dance,
Certainly does.
Which is why I've chosen that as the subject of my first painting. She is moving to that music, and it moved the way the music moved me. The reason I did the second painting is that in that movement, even though you're listening to that tremendous crescendos as they're building, if you've been paying attention to the news in the last month, there is no way I could think about the Middle East and Baghdad without thinking about what's going on in the Middle East. And that was at the back of my mind as I finished my first painting. And I painted the second one, which is an urban scape of Baghdad. And in fact, the minaret and the mosque in the picture, they're very delicate. I handled them as though they were just little jewels in the middle of that city that's in the midst of all that turmoil. And I hope that that message comes across, that about the way I felt about it. I just felt compelled to paint that. That happens to be the square where Saddam Hussein's statue was toppled, and those fires burning in the distance are where he set fire to the oil wells. So there's some accuracy in it, but I didn't want to handle it too heavily. It has some joy in looking at the mosque and those things that are precious in our culture.
Thank you very much, Nan. We really enjoyed looking at your work, and we'll enjoy seeing it and hearing it come together. Danielle, what are you going to play for us next?
Well, is this the last time I'm going to play, or am I going to play 2 more times?
I hope you're going to play 2 more times.
Okay, then I will play maybe yet one more Scheherazade.
Okay.
And then
we'll see what happens next.
We'll save the surprise for later. Speaking of the dance, I think I will play the most dance-like section. Most of the solos, most of the concertmaster solos are very free, and he writes, cadenza or recitative. But this one is actually within the orchestra, and it's quite rhythmic, and I think it's very dance-like.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce you now to Ashley Norman.
Hi, Boris.
Ashley, hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. What inspired you to choose this movement particularly?
I went through all of the music and I listened to it, and it's all really inspiring. I came up with so many pictures, but in my other works outside of Scheherazade, I'm kind of a romantic. I paint a lot of feelings, and this piece was the most romantic piece, and it was the thing that I identified the most with. That's how I chose it.
Now, tell us a little bit about your own background personally.
I took a lot of time off from school. I came back when I was 22. I'm now 27, and I'm graduating soon. Wonderful. Finally! I originally went to school for medicine, and I decided that I couldn't live without art. So I dropped all of that and went back to my passion, and I've been painting ever since.
Can you help describe your painting to us in terms of the way it relates to the music and also how you painted it?
Yeah, of course. So my piece is the second from the end. When I first listened to the music, I sat down and I made probably 100 sketches. I went through so many ideas, and I was so frustrated because I wanted so much for it to be just epic. I wanted the most beautiful illustrative piece that I could do to express this music. And I was so tired when I got home. I fell asleep listening to that music, and that was what I dreamt about. And so that was what I said, okay, well, that's somebody whispering in my ear and saying, this is what you need to do. So that's what I painted.
Describe it to us.
Well, there's the young prince and the princess, and they're coming up out of the ground. They're growing as their love for each other is growing. There's, you can't see it probably from the audience, but behind them, their crowns are made out of dewdrops strung on spider webs. There's a bird playing the violin, because if you listen to the music, there's a part where the violin is kind of chattering, and it sounds like a bird. And there's a part where there's kind of a fluttery violin sound, and it sounds like butterflies flying all over the place. And I thought, well, she's in love. She's got butterflies. They're coming in out of her stomach. The bird is also the keeper of the night and the keeper of dreams. That's what's in her skirt. And then there's a sleeping goat, because it's all about innocence and purity.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing them both together, listening and singing together.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ashley. Danielle, tell me a little bit about your recording a little, because you're going to play some of your recording, are you, at this point? So perhaps you might like to tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, so it's a very eclectic CD, even though it's one composer. He has a lot of different styles that he writes in. What I played for you today was sort of his like rock and roll side, but he also has a very, very humorous, very witty side, as you could probably tell by his name, Mr. Blister, of that piece I played a minute ago. On the CD, there are also many different instruments that sort of accompany me and that I worked with. One in particular that I've never played with is the marimba. There's a piece for violin and marimba that's just really beautiful and calm and soothing. I don't think I'll be able to play that for you today. There's also a duet for violin and viola, which Boris heard the other day at a recital I performed. And a good friend of mine recorded that with me. Also a Sphinx winner, Juan Miguel Hernandez, recorded this piece. It's called Bacchus Chaconne. And if any of you are familiar with the Bach Chaconne, which is sort of a monumental classical piece, Bacchus Chaconne is sort of a little, again, kind of a little bit of a rock and roll nod to Bach's work. And there's also many pieces with piano. And in a bit, you're going to hear one more instrument played by Boris that you may have never, ever, ever heard with the violin, and you probably will never hear again. But I'm going to play. I'm going to play for you right now a movement from Lawrence Dillon's work called 15 Minutes, which refers to, the saying everyone has their 15 minutes of fame. And these are actually 15 little 1-minute pieces. And I'm going to play one of my favorites for you right now. This is called Foolery. because you can almost hear the laughing behind it. And
It's very humorous. It's wonderful.
Boris, can I invite you to come and play a
Well,
piece
not
with
just
me?
yet.
Not just yet?
Not just yet.
Oh,
Come and
okay.
sit down. I'm going to have to introduce, first
All
of
right.
all, Jonathan.
Okay.
Please welcome, or help me welcome, Jonathan Lareva. So, Jonathan, tell us a little about yourself, and then a little bit about the piece of art that you've created for us.
Well, I'm a junior at Channel Islands, and I'm majoring in art, and I'm minoring in English. So I really want to incorporate, story into my art, and I want to get into the comic industry and graphic novels and that kind of thing. And I thought this was perfect because it's a really cool story that this symphony was based off of, and I had the fourth movement because that was the last one left. Girls get to pick the movements first.
Well, that's the most unfortunate. How did you manage to find yourself in that situation?
I don't know, but I like this movement a lot, so it worked out.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. So tell us what we should look for in your piece.
Well, in the movement, I think it was Shipwreck, there's just a lot of intense moments and tension building, and I just wanted to create tension in my picture, like a cool adventure scene with Sinbad, and how Scheherazade always left it to the next night, like I'll tell you more next night. Well, you don't know what's going to happen next, so it's kind of leaving that tension. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much. We look forward to seeing your painting and juxtaposed with the music.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So now, the surprise. Have we come to the point of the surprise?
I think we have.
Okay, all right.
So I'm going to invite Boris to come with me over here and reveal his wonderful instrument.
First of all, I got this last night at the rehearsal. This is a kazoo. And I love kazoos. They're wonderful. Except I had some difficulty deciding which end to blow into this morning, but I finally was set right by Danielle. So we're going to play this thing now. It's called dissonance, whether by intention or perhaps the fact that they expect whoever is going to sing into this will not sing exactly in tune. I'm not sure, but we can expect some dissonance.
Boris is such a good sport for doing this. I sent him a little email 2 days ago. I said, how great would this be if you played the kazoo with me? And he said, sure, why not? So this is dissonance.
Sticking to it.
It was great.
Fun. Thank you.
Great.
It was a lot of fun. We mentioned this role of concertmaster and the challenges that it provides. Your life is very multifaceted. You talked a little bit about the challenges of being a concertmaster. You played with us for a while as in the position of associate concertmaster. You also have a distinguished solo career as a result of the Sphinx competition that you played with the Philadelphia Orchestra and most of the major orchestras around the United States, which is really wonderful, and we're very proud of you for that. But you didn't speak very much about your teaching role outside the camp. So tell me a little bit more, or tell us a little bit more about what you're doing as a teacher.
I do wear a lot of hats, and increasingly teaching is becoming my primary hat, and I couldn't be more happy with that. I'd say it's always kind of been in my personality to tell people what to do.
I see.
So it only, no. I always was interested in how things work on the violin, and I always found myself being a little more analytical than some of my friends and figuring out, you know, how come some people sound like this and some people sound like this? How can I get my students to always sound like this and be the one standing in front of an orchestra? And I've had the extreme privilege to work alongside my teacher and mentor, Robert Lipset, who teaches at the Colburn School, and which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's sometimes called the Juilliard of the West. It's really a rising star in music conservatories around the world. And I studied there for a couple years, and Mr. Lipset started to see that I had a couple of students of my own that he was watching them and watching them steadily improve, and I even had a student get accepted into USC. And so little by little, he asked me if I would like to work with some of his younger students, little by little. And when I say younger students, I mean, some of you may be familiar with Mr. Lipset. His students are incredibly gifted. I hate to use the word prodigies, but they truly are. And so I had the privilege of working with some of these kids and learning to teach at that kind of level, how to take something that's, you know, very good already and make it world class. So he would increasingly give me more and more responsibility until I graduated from Colburn, and it became official that I was his teaching assistant. And by then I'd already sort of built my own studio. I had about 5 or 6 students, and so in addition to being his assistant at the conservatory, I was also very privileged to join the faculty of the prep school program there at Colburn. Colburn has two main divisions, the pre-college program, the prep school, and then the conservatory, which is very elite by audition. So since then, I've developed my studio, and I have about a dozen students now. And I see many of them multiple times a week. In fact, last night after rehearsal, I got back and I saw my student at about 10:30 at night because she's getting ready for competition. And this is what my teacher always did for me. You know, it wasn't just once a week, here's an hour and you're out, you're done. No, it's really a level of dedication to each and every one of your students. I just really love it, and I'm very passionate about it. And the biggest thrill for me is to work with a student on a piece and then see them on stage soloing with an orchestra, having to stand on their own 2 feet and do it. And they're always successful because we always pull out all the stops and make sure that they're extremely prepared. And it's just really, really thrilling.
What about starting a young person? Because I think one of the greatest challenges we hear about El Sistema, for example, as being an ideal system that young people can get involved in. One of the challenges, I mean, we both play the violin. I studied the violin as a student, as a young kid, and I think there are problems with starting the violin. It doesn't come easily. With a piano, you can put your finger on a note and immediately you hear a sound. With a clarinet, as soon as you figure out what to do, you know, in terms of allowing the mouthpiece to buzz, you can get a half-decent sound. In the violin, it's counterintuitive completely. We're not meant to describe, our arms are meant to describe an arc like this, not to pull a bow across a string perpendicular to a string in this particular direction.
Pretty much everything about the violin is completely counterintuitive.
Absolutely. You know, we vibrate. This is a natural way to wave with your hand. Now all of a sudden turn it around and do it this way. You know, it completely twists your body. It's almost as bad as dancing. You know, because as far as dancing ballerinas are concerned, they are continually contorting their bodies in such a way that you know, they have to stop at a certain point, otherwise they create all sorts of problems for themselves. And it's also true in music that unless you really learn how to play in a way that will allow you to play in a relaxed and non-tense fashion, you can also do yourself a lot of harm.
And I feel pretty strongly about this topic, actually.
So talk about it. That's why I know. That's why I asked you.
Because there are, I don't teach a lot of beginners. But I have some young, very gifted students that have studied for a couple years, and I see over and over again that many teachers, most teachers, assume that because a kid is 7 or 8 or 6 or 7 or 8, that all they want to do is play pieces for fun and not focus on anything in particular. And what I found is, you know, I have a little 8-year-old girl that I could work with her for 2 hours. Now she has a very high level of focus. She's very smart, very gifted. But the kinds of things that you'd be surprised that little kids want to work on. You know, little kids would love to have a wonderful bow hold, and it's not that hard to teach it when they're 5 or 6. It's very difficult to reconstruct a bad bow hold when they're 18 or 19, which is probably 90%, including myself, 90% of what happens to most people. And some kids, you know, they get away with murder things that they do, and it's not because they don't want to learn. It's because the teachers assume, oh, they're young, it'll fix itself. No, it doesn't fix itself. I see that over and over. There are certain things that with age just don't. Like you said, it's so unnatural. You know, just because you get older doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to learn how to pull a straight bow. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You're going to learn how to do the incorrect bow hold over and over millions of times. And
how long do you recommend that kids starting practice?
How long
how
every day
long
should
each
they
day
practice?
do you recommend?
Well, I think the best thing is, if at all possible, for a teacher to see a beginning student multiple times in a week for short periods of time. Like a 20-minute lesson can do wonders, or a 20-minute practice session can do wonders if it's you know, if it happens enough. Something my teacher said that was really interesting one time is when you watch you know, these Olympic gymnasts that train, and it's a little bit similar. You know, you have a teacher, it's very intense, you're going to competition, and those Olympic gymnasts, they actually have their teachers with them every time they practice. So they never practice anything incorrectly. Their teachers are always there. You know, you see them all on their bars everywhere, and the teacher's kind of watching all of them. Well, you can't really do that with violin. You can't have all the kids out there practicing and watching them.
But yet in the system, El Sistema, for example, or in the CSUCI method, they believe very much in this business of teaching in groups because they want to make it as much as possible fun.
Right.
It's a matter of, you know, also being challenged by your colleagues.
Right, but there has to be, I mean, even in El Sistema, there has to be a certain amount of private attention. Even if it's kind of within a group context, you know, you pull a kid aside and you work with them privately. I mean, it's the nature of the instrument. Sure. I think that you have to, every kid is so different, which is another fascinating thing about teaching. Every mind is so different and learns so differently. You know, I have some students that they could focus for, like I said, this little girl focused for 2 hours. Then I have an 18-year-old that I get maybe 20 good minutes of a lesson. So, and everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, and you have to kind of, a little bit like a psychologist with each student, you know, figuring out what they need. And so I'm not sure the group thing happens without any private attention. I think.
Well, there's obviously private attention within.
Yeah.
I think that one of the problems that I always see with young people studying is if they're very gifted, and usually they have an idea of the sound that they want to make right away.
Yes.
And the sound they're able to produce, of course, doesn't resemble the sound that they have in their ear. So they get bored very quickly or upset very quickly that they can't actually produce that sound. Mm-hmm. And one of the nice things about El Sistema that I liked was the idea of singing, of using the voice, and in a sense not having an instrument in your hand, but rather almost disadvantaged by the fact you don't have the money to buy an instrument, so you create it out of papier-mâché or paper or cardboard, and in a sense learn the physicality of the movement such that when you actually get an instrument, some of those things are much more
I think it's
natural.
interesting you say singing. I don't think I never sing except when I'm teaching. I'm constantly singing with my students and trying to get them to sing if they aren't, embarrassed teenagers.
Well, that's why when they start at 3 or 4, they're usually not embarrassed to sing.
That's right. And that's yet another thing that, kids can handle a lot more than we think that they can. And they can sing, they can then run outside and play on the swing set, then they can come back in and play a scale for you, and then they can, so kids are just fascinating, and I really love teaching 8, 9, 10-year-olds and setting them up really beautifully, inspiring them, trying to put all the pieces together, because so many times pieces are missing.
Tell me, I know this is sort of unplanned, but I'm very intrigued by this recording that you have, and I'm sure our audience will go out immediately from here and buy it, and they can come to our website, and I'm sure they can find it there so that they can have an opportunity, because it's really amazing. Today, often you find that contemporary music ends up being contemptible as well as contemporary, but in this instance, you found a composer who has a current voice.
Yes, that was very
really
important
wonderful.
to me.
It kind of blends diatonic harmony with modernity at the same time, and has a superb sense of humor, which is really terrific.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether I could trouble you to play another movement for us.
I probably could do that.
That would be wonderful.
I'll play a movement that's another, the theme for today is sort of picturesque music.
Okay.
And all of his pieces here are incredibly picturesque as described by his titles. And I'm going to play one for you. This is called Run Away. And you'll hear a technique on the violin with the bow that's called a flying spiccato, and it's very fast and jumpy, and I hope you enjoy. Run Away.
Well, I want to take a moment or two to express our thanks collectively to Daniel Belen and to all of our artists, Kelly Denton, Erica Craig, Nan Kane, Ashley Norman, and Jonathan Lareva. Can we have a round of applause for our artists? And I also hope that all of you listening to this broadcast, as well as those of you here in the audience, will come to our concert and to view, because you can't really see today. This is just a taste of what you'll experience during the concert, watching the orchestra, listening to the orchestra, listening to our wonderful concertmaster perform, and also watching the incredibly beautiful work that these young artists have created for us. I think we really are very blessed here in Ventura County to have such a plethora of artistic expression, both musical and the graphic arts and ballet and absolutely every form of art that one can think of and that is indeed a blessing for us in the community. So I'd like to thank you all and look forward to seeing you at the concert.